Hi guys, it's Melissa, your plantita abogada here at Tasteful Nodes, coming to you today with a reaction video. So it's my very first reaction video. It's in response to Only Plants' video relating to the Indonesian plant market and supply chain issues. And I felt that it was quite appropriate for the Philippine market. Sean's point of view, his perspective regarding what is happening in Indonesia as far as the plant market depression is concerned, seems on point, and I really related to it as far as what I see here in the Philippine market. If you're a seller, if you're a buyer, what does this mean for you? Join me. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to reflect and react to things that Sean has said as far as the Indonesia market, and I'll go ahead and apply that, or apply our perspective, my perspective, to what's happening here in the Philippine market. Okay? Before we get started, I only have one disclaimer out of my 3 that I normally use, and that is I am not a plant expert. I am a plant hobbyist. I've been a plant hobbyist for a few years now. 2017. Yeah, 2017, so roughly about 5 years now. By all means, take this piece as an opinion piece. I don't have any facts to back this up because like I said, I'm not a seller, I'm a hobbyist. But feel free to leave me your comments down below if you agree, disagree, or if you actually have something to add to what I've said. I would love to hear from you, and I'd like to hear your perspective too. This is an issue that applies to so many of us in the plant community that it really is something that we should have an honest discussion about. Now, without further ado, let me get into it. So essentially, what Sean has observed in Indonesia is that the market is in fact depressing, right? So it's going down. What must go up, like he said, must come down. And he had gone through this entire series of issues that brought about the downturn of the plant pricing in Indonesia. And we're going to go over those issues one by one. So let's get started.
I wanted to be honest because I think this is something that with no exception, every plant sellers, nurseries in Indonesia is going through. And I wanted maybe even some of you overseas, whether you're a business, you're noticing a little bit of that happening.
So as Sean starts out, he says that he wanted to create the video because he noticed that it's something that a lot of growers and sellers are going through in Indonesia. I'd like to add plant resellers here in the Philippines are going through the same thing. So we've got the growers, the plant resellers, the plant sellers, the importers, not so much as exporters, and some of the hobbyists, because a lot of the hobbyists here, I guess a lot of us relied on buying plants at a certain price and thinking, okay, you know what, I could go ahead and sell a propagation of this and I could make a little bit of my money back so I could have this in my collection. So those are the people I think who would be affected by this particular video.
I'm going to talk about the supply chain issues first. What are the issues, right? Number one, in the pandemic or even before that, people had the tendency to rush towards one genus. Like, let's say there's a popular species, everyone's just going to rush into it. You know, orchid people, I don't care, carnivorous people, everyone's just going to dive into aroids, and then everyone's just going to flood the market. This caused the price to raise very dramatically because everyone wants the same thing. But then at the same time, because everyone has it and everyone's propagating it, it allows things to fall very quickly, head first.
Yeah, so what he said is quite true. And I'll be more specific about this, is that it was the aroid craze that started everyone's interest into jumping into aroids. It wasn't just a response to the pandemic per se, but if you look at the international plant groups, even houseplant hobbyists, the like, International Aroid Society, their membership had increased, gosh, I want to say maybe a year or two before the pandemic even happened. So there was an interest and a building up of collectors within the aroid community. And I want to say that that started the increase in prices in aroids. But like Sean said, the sudden skyrocket didn't happen until the actual pandemic occurred, right? Gosh. Plants, for example, my Monstera Thai constellation, which cost me 1,000 pesos for 4 medium-sized leaves for a medium-sized plant. It was no longer juvenile. Gosh, 1,000 pesos is 20 bucks. Yeah, 20 bucks, guys. That was two years beforehand, so 2018 roughly, when we bought it. And I tell you, you can't find a Thai constellation for that price anymore. Here in the Philippines, pricing is around 6,000 on average, and it's kind of shocking, really. That translates to roughly a little over $100 for a small plant even. I've seen plant sellers from Indonesia have better pricing when it comes to Monstera albos, Monstera deliciosa white forms, right? But the Thai constellation pricing has seemed to remain stable, and that's what I'm saying about pre-pandemic versus pandemic pricing. 20 bucks versus over 100 bucks is a big deal. But I digress. So let me go ahead and continue on with what Sean has to say.
Now what's happening is that you have the growers, you have your resellers, and you have your customers, and everyone is propagating, everyone is retailing, everyone's selling online, everyone is exporting. Do you see where the problem may be? This is a complete supply chain disaster.
Yeah, it is a bit of a complete supply chain disaster, right? Lines are getting blurred. So it's election season, guys, and there's just, yeah, you've got cars and trucks passing by with noise pollution all over the place. So sorry for that. But as Sean said, it's a supply chain disaster right now because everyone is selling. The lines are getting blurred between the roles of buyers, resellers, importers, because the exporters don't really apply to us as much, and consumers, so collectors, right? Everybody's propagating, and there's no control over the amount of plants that get put out. So keep that in mind. Supply and demand, right? When everybody's doing the same thing, supply increases.
The demand for plants have fallen because every customer that was around in the last 2 years have converted into sellers. So effectively, this is broken, and it is the wrong message to.
So, like I mentioned, demand has fallen because supply is up. You've got an oversupply of plants because everybody is selling, and I mean, it harms. How do I say this? It harms certain people within the plant community more than others.
So it's come to that point where it's not pleasant anymore. It's no fun anymore. The salespeople, the retail people who used to have so much passion, and they're doing this live sale. This live sale is an event here in Indonesia where they go on Instagram and they go live in front of an audience and they sell plants, and it will be fun. Sometimes it's just impromptu bidding and people would fight for the plant. So there used to be a lot of live sale going on during COVID. It was so much fun, but now you can tell all the sellers are just like, they're just dreading the process, and that's not how it.
Well, relating to the live selling, the Philippine live selling market is still really, really strong. In fact, we have Philippine live sellers from other countries like Thailand, right? We like to watch one live seller out of Thailand who's Filipino as well. But that's beside the point. So the point is that Sean is making is that even live sellers are losing their appetite towards selling, their vigor, their excitement towards selling. And you see that happening with I guess the buyers as well. A plant group that I help admin, Aroids Plus Plant Tips Philippines, one of our main rules, our number one rule actually, is that there will be no selling or live selling on the page. And that's because a lot of us sought solace in the group because all other plant groups in the Philippines actually have live selling as well. And the space that I help admin is actually a place where people are able to seek solace from that, where they can look for tips and they can talk to other hobbyists, and where they can just flex their plants. Because at some point, live selling, the selling does tend to get overwhelming, not just for the sellers, but for the buyers as well. And we're at that point now. We're at that point where I guess everyone is over the hard sell of the in-your-face live selling. And that's kind of indicative of the fact that people are also not as excited to buy anymore, at least in my opinion. When you have people running away from all other Facebook pages to join a page that prohibits live selling, it kind of says something, you know? Not that live selling is bad. I'll go ahead and say that right now. There's nothing wrong with live selling. In fact, some people rely on live selling to make a livelihood, to make a living, right? But I guess it's just getting too much. It's getting overwhelming for a lot of the consumers. It takes two to tango. You need the sellers and you need the buyers. And if you are missing one of them, if you're missing one of those parties, the selling market is not going to be, the plant market is not going to be as effective.
The falling of demand in house plants, and this is normal when you have something going up as everything has to come down. So with the end of COVID in sight, people are now buying plenty. I'm traveling for 3 weeks. So people are spending more money on clothing, on traveling, on other things, and they're not spending as much time at home.
And that's very true. I mean, we can't put the blame on those in the plant market, right? We can't just say, oh, it's because of the sellers are selling too high, or it's the resellers are selling too high, or the consumers, the collectors are undercutting everyone. It's not just that. Now that pandemic restrictions have loosened, now that people are able to travel, to go out, the focus isn't so much on plants make people happy, right? It's not on that anymore. It's not a way to alleviate boredom or depression or loneliness at home. Now that people are able to travel, it really does put a damper on the market because money is being diverted to other things, such as travel, clothing so that people can look good when they travel, hotels so that they have a place to stay when they travel, things like that. Sorry. But yeah, so there are multiple reasons, and we can't just blame the plant community itself for what's going on. But the reason that the plant community is mentioned first is because the plant community is something that is within our control as consumers, as plant hobbyists, as sellers and resellers, right? The plant community has no control over the hotels or the tourism industry or the malls for that matter. We only, I guess, can address that which we control.
And another thing is an overestimation of exports. And I will always support exports and the local businesses here who want to export, 100%. But when during the COVID period, people geared up and said, "Oh my God, export's a big market. We're going to export all these rare plants." I kind of knew that this hype would not last forever, only because, number one, again, everybody is trying to export. The nurseries, the sellers, and the customers are all trying to export, and not everyone's doing a good job at it. Trust me, there are a lot of shitty people out there with no experience trying to, take advantage of this.
I mean, the export market doesn't hit the Philippines as hard as it is hitting Indonesia, right? What we do have here, an issue, is the import market. So when the pandemic hit, those people who had these plants and decided to propagate out of boredom and then all of a sudden found themselves with multiple propagations, we shared those plants with some of our friends, word of mouth spread, and those plants all of a sudden became I don't know, how do I say it? Would it be something of a luxury item? Would it be something of a I don't know, a status item? Anyhow, in either way, once that happened, a few entrepreneurial people saw that, hey, you know what? This plant market could make a killing. We could make a killing here by bringing in imports, right? Let's go import all of these plants. Let's set our prices. Everybody agrees to one price, and let's try to sell. Let's try to dominate the market. And that's what happened. So I know of a few people who did that, and they did exceptionally well during the pandemic. They're not doing as well now. And, that's because they're at a crossroads, I think, personally. At that point, it's what do? Do you stick to the plants that everybody wants, but you have to sell at a lower price because everybody has? Do you look for unicorns? And do you try to place a bet on whether or not that plant will, become viral, whether it will actually resonate with the plant community? Because let's say, I take a chance on this variegated plant because everybody likes variegated plants, right? But it's one of those variegated plants that just doesn't resonate and it doesn't make a difference to anyone in the plant community. You lose money. So it's that same thing. Importers are at a crossroads as far as how to proceed. Do they proceed with the tried and true pink princesses, Monstera albos, which are going incredibly low considering how much they used to be last year? Or do you go with the harder to find plants, the variegated pedatums, the variegated squamiferum, where only a certain amount of the market can purchase, and by doing that, there'll be artificial controls in place just because only so many people can buy it, right? But yeah, I could understand the plight of the importers. Of course, with the importers, you also have the importers affecting the gardeners who existed before the pandemic happened. So all of these big, huge gardeners in Mindanao, the gardeners in Cavite, you've got Batangas, you've got these people being affected because what used to be their market, because they had these plants, these rare plants, is no longer because everyone can just import them easily, right? So yeah, everyone is affected by imports here in the Philippines, not so much the export market. But I agree, we have an issue with it, and it's not easy to solve.
A lot of the overseas nursery tours and also plant collectors on Instagram, on YouTube, they're propagating like crazy. So I think at some point it will become irrelevant for us to supply them with, single cutting of a rare plant, only to have them, be kind of risk their way there. Like, 'cause not all of them will make it. And over there, a lot of the plants are being propagated very, very efficiently. I've seen some really, really cool setups, with like a moss, prop box.
And I mean, that's something that we see here in the Philippines, right? What used to sell at one node during the pandemic for double the price is now being sold for half the price for like 4 leaves, right? For 4 nodes. So yeah, efficiency is winning the game. Thailand and I believe Indonesia is also quite efficient in producing all of these, in mass producing these plants that were once collector's items, the pink princesses, the Monstera albos, aglaunemas. So now there's not so much a hype or a a tight demand for things, now it's a buyer's market because the buyers dictate what they want and they also dictate the pricing.
I think also in light of the world economy, first of all, we're coming out of COVID and everyone, again, is not going to be demanding plants. People are traveling, Europeans, Americans. So the demand for plants are going down after this. Also now with Russia and Ukraine, come on. The world economy is just going really, really bad.
Well, that's very true. I want to say that when there are times of scarcity and insecurity, people will redirect their priorities, right? So here in the Philippines, with what's going on in Eastern Europe, sorry, these flies are killing me. With what's going on in Eastern Europe, Ukraine and Russia specifically, what happens is insecurity here in the Philippines has risen due to rising gas prices, right? Pricing relating to food products, wheat, chicken, the meats, anything where food needs to be transported from one area to another or imported from one country to another because we don't produce our own wheat here. Yeah, the pricing has gone up and people are now realizing that, hey, you know what? I've got a bakery. I can't just, I have to refocus more resources towards the bakery, and that leaves them with less resources towards plant collecting and the like, right? So if I own a carinderia, a cafeteria, right, I would personally reorganize my resources redirect them towards my business rather than towards my hobby. And that's where international security and international scarcity comes in, is if we're feeling the crunch in other ways, then yeah, we would tighten our belts and plants would go back to being a hobby rather than a lifestyle, a business.
For me personally, as a consumer and also a seller of plants, I'm now very hesitant about buying these plants. Why would I buy it now when I know that it's just going to fall? So the value of rare plants has been mocked. Has been people are now a little bit hesitant to spend that much money.
Hard agree on that one. So whereas when we were all locked down, there was a pandemic, there was nothing to do, we had sources of income that we could spend. We took chances on businesses where we saw opportunities, like the plant community, right? This is where the resellers and some hobbyists decided to turn sellers also. I will never, ever blame people for doing what they needed to do to survive during the pandemic. I won't. And I certainly won't blame people for trying to make their businesses survive. I refuse to do that as well. But as a hobbyist, me personally, someone who doesn't sell plants, who only releases plants to friends on occasion, I would say that I would not invest in a plant for the purposes of selling. It would be too scary for me just because plant pricing is now volatile. It's no longer something that you can control just because everybody has different, or just because there's so many resources now as far as where you can get the plants. So if you're a collector, absolutely, buy what makes you happy. If it's not going to make you bankrupt, do it. But if you're doing it solely for the purposes of making money or making your money back, I would hesitate and think twice before I splurge on that pricey plant.
Number one, know your role and work within your passion. What are you? Are you a grower? Are you a seller? Or are you a customer? Are you just supposed to enjoy the plants and you have your day job, you have your businesses, and you just wanna support just have beautiful plants around? What are you, right? You can't be all of these things at the same time. It will not work if everybody is everything at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I guess we are at the point where the world is reopening, and you know, life is coming back. Is this the new normal? I don't know, but we are at the point where everyone is at a crossroads. Do we go back to work? Do we pursue this new business that we've created? I know some people have created businesses that are just exceptional. I'm thinking Monstera Cafe. I haven't visited yet, but oh yeah, oh gosh, this giant Adansonii is from them. Yeah, but that's beside the point. Monique is also is quite talented. She is also a singer. So what she was able to do is she was able to create a niche space for herself, where she has a cafe, which also includes her plants and also includes her passion, which is singing. So for people like her, it's easy for her to continue on with this business and carry on with it. But for people who are hobbyists and just like to propagate and release in order to further their collections, it's like, do we continue? Or do we go back to our roles as consumers, you know? Do we go back to our day jobs as attorneys, as I guess designers, as nurses? So as teachers, you know, do we go back or do we continue on? It is where we define our roles within the plant community where we can actually make it better, I think. And I completely agree with Sean on this one.
Number 2, stick to your genus, or family of plants that you really care for. If you're into trailing plants, if you're into succulent cacti, if you're into carnivorous.
Yeah, this is a great point right here. Stick to your genus, your family plants, stick to your specialty, right?
Everybody should follow their genus, be the best at it, be the best grower, be the best hybridizer, because we are going to be competing in a world stage after this. Like the Thai people, people in Thailand, they are amazing at it. They work their genus with so much passion, and they hybridize things. They're the best at growing things. They're very good at scaling up production in their respective genus. They all didn't rush towards aeroids when that happened. So in a lot of the more developed economies, people are, they love plants for just out of pure passion. They didn't like it because it's gonna fetch them money. So that is a mindset that we Indonesians need to fix. We need to love. We need to discover our love. If it's not for you, and you're just doing it for the money, now's not the time.
I agree. It's a little known fact that the Philippines is one of the top producers of tillandsias in the world. And these are just your basic tillandsias, okay? These are your ionanthas, these are your bulbosas. So the basic levels of tillandsia, the Philippines are top producers, right? I know that we have some great hybridizers here. I'm thinking the Daphitases of Bacolod, so si Ate Doreen and si Manong Rene. They're excellent tillandsia hybridizers. They create their own gorgeous specimens of tillandsias, and they're known for it. I mean, she is the queen of tillandsia, right? Hi, Ate Doreen. Also, as far as a hybridizer is concerned, we've got Boyet Ganigan of Eridan Aeroids. I mean, who has not heard of his his Sansevieria BG Royale, right? Or Regal. I'm sorry. But that's what I'm saying. So we've got these fantastic mentors within the community, the Daphitases and Boyet Ganigan, and I'm sure there are more. I'm sure I know we have a Gumamela hybridizer within the Aeroids Plus community. There is also a hybridizer of rain lilies here in the Philippines. He's well known. He creates his own articles, in fact, for print. And so we've got the human resources. We've got people who are capable of doing great things, of being great mentors. we have the resources as far as the climate is concerned. We have the land. So why not take advantage of that? Focus in on one genus, one specialty, and let's try to compete on an international level.
And every genus and their societies, like your carnivorous plant societies, especially carnivorous, my goodness, orchids and all that, you guys need to have your own events. You need to increase your members. You need to educate. You need to create more interest.
Yeah, I agree. It's quite surprising for such a big plant community. There isn't much representation in terms of a society or of events promoting such a society. I don't recall seeing many plant societies here to begin with. So it is something that we need to focus on here is for those who truly want to continue on with the plant community is to support them, create the society, create the resources for these people to meet, to exchange information, and I guess to advocate for them, right? That would be a great way for the Philippine plant community to continue. So guys, we have the resources here like Thailand and Indonesia. We just need to find a way to harness this, to make good use of it. And I completely agree. We need to start competing on an international level because we've got the capabilities.
Everybody is broken now, basically. And the next one is going to be a little bit offensive, but
Offensive, huh? Just gonna be a little bit offensive? Okay. Marites mode activated. Wonder what this is about.
if you have come into the plant market recently for the pure reason of being profitable, just profiting from the plants, but the plant itself brought you no joy, and now with the market being so gloomy and it has shown no signs of coming up, and let's say you have not profited from this business venture in plants currently, step off. That is my advice. There's no point in moving on and being in this saturated market. Give somebody else, give those people who love the plants, who are able to care for them.
I mean, it's tough love, it's hard advice, but he's not wrong, guys. As offensive as it may sound, he's not wrong. There has to be a point where people look at their priorities and their life goals, and I guess, look at your 5-year plan. Let's put this away because my hands are going to be busy. But let's say, oh God, M&Ms. Let's say look at your 5-year plan, right? Do you see yourself selling in 5 years? Do you see the market getting better in 5 years? Do you see yourself working harder, smarter? Or do you see yourself just working harder, period, not smarter, barely making ends meet? If that's the case, maybe it's time to cut your losses. Maybe it's time to say, okay, you know what? I've evened out. I'm going to go ahead and back away, and I'm going to go ahead and let the guys who do this for a living, who've been doing this for a living before the pandemic, I'm going to give the opportunities back to them because this is something that they know how to do. Figure out who you are, what you want to do, figure out your role in society as well as the plant community. And if you don't see yourself being part of the selling plant community, then excuse yourself gracefully and let's just enjoy the market as it was intended.
And next, if we decided to work together as a community, the sellers and the growers have to work very, very closely together. They have to earn each other's trust. This means that the sellers actually are the ones who are on the front line. They are the ones who know the trend. They should know what people are looking for, how many quantity they're looking for, and then work with the growers and letting them grow, because growers can grow these plants faster and more effectively and better quality than these sellers can. In fact, this is the way that the Western or more developed countries do it. This is how their supply chain works. You would order from nurseries in Florida and you would then supply them to the...
Yeah, so that's exactly a good way to proceed from this point, right? Sellers and growers need to return to what they do best. Sellers, you either got it or you don't. You know, you either have that oomph that makes people watch you, and you know that makes them want to check your link out every time you post a new live selling, or you don't. And same goes for growing. You either have the know-how and the instincts to grow properly, or you don't. We've seen both where there are these gorgeous plants and they're being sold for rock bottom prices because the sellers are actually growers and they can't sell. Vice versa, we also have people who are sellers who are propagating and should not be propagating because their plants either arrive dead or aren't ready for release. So, you know, do what you do best. If selling is your thing, then that's where you should be applying your strengths, right? If growing is it, that's where you should be applying your strengths. So the Tillandsias that I mentioned, the Philippine being the Tillandsia capital of the world, as far as production is concerned, okay? You know, we've got huge farms in Lukban, Quezon. And what they do is they've got foreigners who are coming in. I won't mention ethnicities because I don't want anyone to get flamed, right? This is not that kind of video. We're not flaming anybody. But foreigners come in and put up the money needed for the operation. Then you have, you know, Filipinos running the show, right from acquiring, from growing, from fertilizing, from planting seeds, from hybridizing. This is where our manpower comes in. We know our strengths. It's a shame that we can't have Filipino owners putting costs up front for a wholly Filipino-owned operation, but that's another subject, and that's a subject for another day as well.
And the next thing, this is very, very difficult to do here in Indonesia, and it's usually not achievable even across other industries, and that is standardizing the price. This means that a grower should set the wholesale price and the retail price, and then any sellers that try to outmaneuver that.
Like Sean said, you have growers who set the wholesale price and retail price. Fantastic. Except in this case, they're importers. The retail and the wholesale prices here in the Philippines seem to be all over the place based on location. Like I said earlier, with the global insecurity regarding gas prices, you know, location matters, shipping matters. So it's kind of hard for us to go ahead and set wholesale prices and retail prices across the board. It would be fantastic so that no one is undercutting each other. I just don't see how we can do it though, without putting certain growers at risk when others benefit.
The growers here should, in fact, have known what is the cost to grow these plants, what is their wholesale value, how much are they willing to part with it in a bigger volume, and then they should, in fact, suggest a retail price.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with that. The growers know how much it costs for water, how much it costs for manpower, how much it costs for fertilizing, how much it costs to maintain the building, all of that stuff. That's what the growers know, and that's why it would be great if the growers were able to set the retail and wholesale prices. However, like I mentioned earlier, we do have a problem being an archipelago, right? We've got Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and then other islands aside from that, where we would need to transport plants and Yeah, gas prices would definitely be a big consideration here. And I don't have any answer as far as how to make this something that would benefit all of the growers across the entire country.
For me, I've actually bought a lot of plants that way. I've bought plants when it's a little bit expensive, and then now they've become very common. And I'm no longer interested in buying plants anymore because I felt cheated. I felt like, okay, what's the point in buying plants if it's just going to go through that? That is sort of why I was a little bit heartbroken with this hobby. I started with just loving the plants, just enjoying their form and the way they look, and having them around, growing them, caring for them, propagating them. But again, having gone through this COVID, having gone through this market upward and downward trend, I realized that this is not something.
I have a friend who used to run a small-time importing business with another friend, and he got out of the business completely because it was just too stressful for him. So now he owns a successful cafe. So the second friend who's gone into the cafe business, the plant cafe business, and it works for him, and it works for my other friend Monique. So I guess find your joy where plants are concerned, but if you can't find a business that brings you joy, where plants are concerned, then don't bother. Just keep your joy pure, and that would be with plants. Just keep your plants pure. Don't complicate it with business.
Plants can be a lifestyle. They can be with us as companions. They don't always have to be about jacking up the price and then having them fall when supply exceeds demand at some point.
So per Sean, right? And I'll quote: "Plant keeping should be a lifestyle." That's Sean 2022. Tasteful Nodes 2022 would be: "Plant keeping should be a lifestyle, not a source of stress." So remember what brought you to plant keeping to begin with. Majority of us got into plant keeping because we were attracted to these plants. We were challenged by the idea of raising them, of bringing them to their best form. So let's try to get back to that. Let's not let plants be our source of stress. If you're a hobbyist like me, it might be time to back away, to step away from the plant sales and to do other things that you like. So like I was saying before, I have a friend who successfully integrated her love of plants with her previous business, her previous printing business, and she put both those together. She's going pretty strong. She's got a nice following. She has a great support system in terms of her husband and her kids. It can be done. But if we can't do it, guys, let's not force it, okay? I mean, it's either you can or you can't. There's no in between. In addition to the solutions that Sean proposed, I think that we have an additional proposal or solution that we can try to jumpstart or integrate that would be Philippine specific, right? It's let the Philippine government be involved. The Philippines has the climate and resources to be a major player in the international plant industry. But like plants, the government needs to help identify, nurture, prune where needed, and promote our industry. Give support to what we have available now, to the growers we have available now, and let's compete. Let's make this happen. Ipagmalaki ang sariling atin. So, I guess show off or brag, boast about our very own. We have the capabilities. We just need the right support and the right mechanisms in place. So that's enough about me and my opinions. I'd like to hear about yours. Put them down in the comment section below. Tell me what you think, how we can make our plant community better, how we can help our plant community survive this great plant depression now that plant plant prices seem to be turning downwards. Tell me in the comments. Or if you think I'm imagining that plant prices are going down, tell me that too. I'd like to hear from you. Go ahead and give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell so that you get future notifications of any videos that I may share. Check me out on Tasteful Nodes on Facebook, where I do post longer write-ups and memes. And if you just want to look at pretty pictures and not stress about anything, check me out on Instagram. I'm there as Tasteful Nodes as well. Okay guys, until next time, sa uulitin, keep your nodes classy and tasteful. Bye. Snack time.